The technology landscape is exploding, and it has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. There's so much information out there, it can be hard to know where to start or who to trust. Your host, David Paul, is a seasoned venture capital investor that has founded his own investment firm, DWP Capital. He's a straight shooter that cuts through all the noise to bring you real and authentic conversations with investors, founders, and operators in the startup ecosystem. Join him each week to stay current with today's trends and get smarter about startups and tech investing.
Hey everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where we talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation within startups. Today, I am talking to my man, Piet, and I'm going to mispronounce his last name, so I'm going to let him do it himself. And he is the founder of IOMETE. It sounds like it's very European, IOMETE.
Yeah.
And he is I'm going to let him describe it to you, but he was also the CEO of, Arizona darling company Tuft, which was a CPG mattress company. And now he's off doing his new venture. Piet, how you doing?
Good. Awesome to be here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really good to have you. Look good. You smell good. You're wearing nice shoes. Data.
Yeah.
We're talking about data. Tell me exactly about IOMETE.
Yeah. It's funny that you pronounce it IOMETE. Like I like to say IOMETE. We actually recently recorded a video where we got people from various countries to pronounce the name IOMETE, which is spelled IOMETE.
Mm-hmm.
And 50 people said it 50 times differently. So you're not the only one.
That might be a signal to rebrand, man.
Well, domains are hard to get these days.
Indeed.
Yeah, but IOMETE actually means small, I was told, in Esperanto language.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in big data, so that's kind of a nice contrary connection there.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we provide a data platform for data-intensive organizations that allow them to compute and store data.
Okay, so compute and store data, meaning you have data sources coming in, and it's a way to essentially compress the data, or to kind of like normalize the data. How do you what's the use case? Kind of give me a customer use case.
Yeah, so our core customers are typically data engineers or consumers of data in data-intensive organizations. So that means by definition that the organization is like Series A or beyond. So you like at Series A, most companies start to hire like their first data scientist. Their board starts to ask questions. And that's the moment where the organization starts to become hungry for data. At that moment, they usually run analytics on their production database. And that typically gets slow and expensive at the same time. So that's a good moment to start exploring the product that we offer. So the way to think about it is really like a toolkit or a Swiss Army knife for data. So it's typically the core of a data stack. So you might remember in the 80s, there was like the data warehouse, which was kind of like the first version of what we offer. What we offer is called...
And for the listener who doesn't know, what's a data warehouse?
Yeah, so a data warehouse is a central repository for data.
Okay.
So organizations have data, for various purposes. So it could be like for finance, for sales.
Different systems,
different sources. So the way that the data stack works nowadays is there is a central repository. So that's what we offer. And then you typically ingest data from different sources. We provide that partly ingestion. So we call it like short tail ingestion, because there's also long tail ingestion for very specific data sources. But if you want to load data from your operational database into IOMETE, that's what we offer in our toolkit as well. And then we allow you to manipulate that data. So like, join data from different sources and to connect it to, in the end, like a BI or a machine learning or AI application. So it's really like the core, let's say, compute and storage unit of your data infrastructure. Yeah, it's a little technical product.
It is technical, but it's super important. Everybody talks about Web3. Everyone talks about crypto. And I feel like this chasm, like we just missed it. We talked about it. Like McKinsey's writing reports about it. But the adoption curve of really understanding big data and being able to normalize it and being able to do it at scale, and because you can't have really good AI unless you have really good data.
Correct. Like for AI and ML, it's really the quality of the data also becomes really important. So in our platform, there are also like safeguards and quality controls to make sure that your data is of great quality. For instance, if you have like a self-driving car, right? You don't want it to make decisions on data that is incorrect. It would lead to big problems. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I want to talk a little bit about the data stack because I use these podcasts selfishly to learn myself, and then if the listeners like it, then that's great. If they don't, I don't care.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the data stack, there's the data warehouse layer, and then there's the ingestion engines, right, that bring in, and I'm sure the normalization kind of sits somewhere in between there, or maybe that's part of the ingestion, and then there's like this new category that I just discovered. Tomo Bravo just purchased it. I think it's called like Ascension or Accenture, and it's a data catalog.
Oh yeah.
Right, and they spent like 16x, so they're still buying like idiots, and that's why their book's down.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit just about the data stack?
Yeah. So like if you would go to our homepage, actually our let's say number one statement is the modern data stack, because that's actually what we try to deliver. But we're a relatively young company, so there are certain components that we haven't built out yet. Is
your accent fake, by the way?
No, I'm Dutch.
Okay, because it sounds really good. It sounds really eloquent. You got a voice for podcasting. If I was to fake an accent, it would be yours.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I'm not. I get people know that I'm an accent when I open my mouth, basically. And I've been in the US for 15 years, so I haven't done a very great job of getting rid of it.
Okay, so data stack, modern data stack.
Yeah. So you were talking about the data catalog. So that's actually one thing that is included in our data stack already, because. Like my co-founder is the technical guy, and he is actually the one that is the ID guy that got to this ID. I joined him a few months later. And he was working at large organizations. The last organization he was working for was Uber. We have another guy that worked at Google. So we have a couple of guys that worked at larger organizations, engineers, and they encountered all the same problem. And the problem is... you have, as an engineering team, you need to tie together all these different components, and you need to purchase them from standalone. You need to purchase standalone solutions from individual vendors, and then you need to all kind of like patch them together, integrate them, which is time consuming, and it's also very expensive. So what we try to do is basically provide an all-in-one solution. So it also already includes a data catalog. So you can purchase a standalone data catalog from typically like a VC-funded party. But those things have typically like a lot of bells and whistles, and will not provide full value for every organization. Like it might be a great value if you're like pretty far along in your data journey, and you have an experienced data engineering team. But when you're like a Series A company and you just have like 3 or 4 engineers and you're building out your engineering team, you don't need all those bells and whistles. So we have like 80-20 that and provide the key features already in our platform.
Yeah, you're bundling, a platform and selling it, lower, not to enterprise.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I would like to emphasize is there are data is a hot space. So there are a couple of other parties out there that also provide all-in-one solutions. But what they have done is they build it on existing solutions like Snowflake and Fivetran. And what then happens is you basically pay 2 bills, right? You pay the Snowflake bill plus their bill. So it gets very expensive.
So is that a lack of VCs doing lack of technical due diligence, or like are they going to is the roadmap saying, okay, we're just going to see if we can provide this and then validate it and then rebuild it?
That's very interesting. I think this is a very interesting topic that is even tied to macroeconomic environment. Like what we have seen over the past 10 years is a lot of cheap money, right? So VCs are in love with B2B or enterprise software typically. And why is that? 70-80% margins, 70 to 80 or higher, sometimes 90, and long customer lifetime value, right? Once you're in with a sticky product, you can be there for 5, 6, 7 years.
And people buy it without their own money.
Yes, that's the other thing, for sure. Yeah, and that's an important dynamic. But as you're well aware, over the past year, things have changed drastically. So we have seen that even big tech is doing big layoffs. You see that later stage scale-ups are now, probably having to do a down round or an equal round, or, they're laying off people. So organizations are becoming more cost conscious. At the same time, data is growing. So what we chose to do is not to build on top of existing solutions, because we think a low price, which is the cost to the user, is also very important. So what we did is we leverage open source technologies. So for instance, we use an open source table format by the name of Apache Iceberg. We use some interesting modern open source solutions, which provides a lot of benefits to the user. Well, one of them is we are able to offer at a way lower price than proprietary software. And it also provides a lot of flexibility because it's just easier to integrate with other stuff. Plus you have like this whole community of engineers all working on this technology. So the technology also advances faster than would be the case when you go into proprietary direction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you think about building out your product and kind of bundling your platform and going to market, going to startups and, Series A, Series B players makes sense. Now, are you just kind of like are you giving them data for their customers? Or are you giving them data for themselves? How does that work?
Great question. Both. We recently onboarded a new customer that is their business model is they basically provide analytical services to individual retailers in the Midwest. So they have, I think, like 500 or so supermarkets that are their customers, like individual supermarkets or like small chain supermarkets. And they provide, merchandising analytics and all that stuff. So in that case, price is also very important for them, right? Because they buy basically our platform, and our platform is pay as you go. So you pay per compute hour, per node. So we are their cost price. So that's very attractive for them because we allow them to basically capture more gross margin, and they sell those analytics then to other companies.
Yeah, so I find that's super interesting. So when you're thinking about data companies, like like software companies that sell to businesses because they have data. Like for instance, I just bought an incredible piece of software called Grata, and it's for sourcing bootstrap companies. And they, the data that they get is not their data. It's, it's an agglomeration of, LinkedIn and Crunchbase and, web crawler. And they also have this really great, scraping technology that kind of scrape the whole internet. And then they've got this this scraping layer on top of this database, right? So when you're thinking about like the value of your software, what is the value? Like, is it because the data is not yours, it's not proprietary. Is it how you ingest the data? It's how like the application of how the data is being processed. Like, how do you think about really what the value driver is for a data company? Not your data company, but like a software that's providing data to like an end consumer.
Okay, I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Okay, let me rephrase. So let's pretend that I'm a data company that takes healthcare claims, and I can understand how healthcare claims, and I cross-pollinate that with real estate and where people live, and then I can actually help hospitals determine where to set up clinics. Right? Yep. Let's use that as a use case. The data sources themselves are not proprietary, right? So where is the value within that company? Is it how they ingest the data? Is it how they normalize it and then create an application for the end customer? Like, how do you think about that?
So first of all, that's not what we do.
Yeah,
right?
I know, exactly.
Yeah. But I think the value there is that it's almost like preparing a cocktail, right? So they purchase several ingredients and then have like a certain amount of creativity to, a recipe to make the cocktail, and then you have a very nice cocktail that people want.
Right, exactly.
And there is nothing wrong with that.
But you could be the shaker.
Yeah, but the thing with that is like, couldn't anyone do that? Like how proprietary, how special, what type of a moat do they really have? For instance, Snowflake, which is another player in this area. They've been around for 10 years, and what they try to do now is create what they call data cloud. So they try to do exactly what you describe, right? So you can like access Nielsen data, other data, and then mix all of that and then come up with your proprietary product. And the reason that they do it is they want everyone obviously in their ecosystem and lock them in with proprietary data, which is but that's definitely like a popular thing that I recognize. But my question would be like, how defendable is it if parties like Snowflake try to promote that as well? Like, couldn't I just spin up a Snowflake instance and combine those data sources too and start to sell them, right?
Right, exactly.
So then it comes down to price pretty quickly. It becomes commoditized.
Right. So that's kind of how I think about, because I've been looking a lot at like verticalized data companies, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're building a data company, like where's the data coming from? And, is there value in how like the data parsing and the data cataloging in a way that, that could be something, because I think the puck is going from a vertical perspective towards verticalized data companies, like, especially those with higher regulations, aerospace, healthcare.
Yeah. But if you think about data as a product, that's what you're doing with that business model. Wouldn't you want to produce that data at one point? Let's assume it's very easy to combine data sources, which it's not entirely yet, right? But that's where it's going to. Like, wouldn't you choose for the provider that can just give you that at the very lowest price, right?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to provide additional value, right? Like the application would have to have some kind of be somehow integrated with the workflow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would be the kind of the conduit.
For sure.
Cool. So what about, I've been, I'm not very smart. So like this.
You are. We all know.
So I've been, trying to dip my toes into like thematic investing, right? And really looking at where the puck's going, where's their opportunity, what's hype, what's bullshit, what's not bullshit. And I've been looking in, sort of, more inelastic markets that aren't going to be super recessionary, right? And, for some reason, I've been seeing this boom in utility companies, believe it or not. And I think it's a lot of that tailwinds are, Build Back Better money, that's coming in. These, like, our pipe infrastructure is like all deteriorating, right? The power lines are getting deteriorated. So there's a need, right? You don't believe that?
Well, I recently listened to another podcast. Typically, I listen to yours, but I catch a couple of other ones.
Who else do you listen to?
Now, this I think was Shamat. He has a very complicated last name.
Polyhapatia?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. How about that? I'm a fanboy. I love that.
Yeah. No, he's very, very intelligent. And he was talking actually about energy. It's one of the sectors that he's interested in. And he said that with this new, I think Biden calls it PT inflation bill, but the bill that was like a trillion or $1.5 trillion. Right. There is a lot of money in there for solar, like for personal.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So his thesis is that the cost of energy is going to move to zero.
Oh, interesting.
And that would be a big disruptor then for utility companies.
Yeah. Well, Chamath also, is noticeably heavily invested in solar and is a known pump and dumper. But, for my purposes, I was looking at water.
Water?
Yeah.
Oh, no, water is... there is actually a very cool company that I would like to bring to your attention. I don't know if I can come up with a name, but what they do is they basically... it's a Dutch company. And they...
Pass.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
No. They I think it's called water. Well, we can add it to the show notes later, but I think it's called like Water Loop or something. But they're big in water reuse.
I like that. I love that.
Yeah, for like on a residential level.
Oh, nice.
Like in your house.
Nice.
Like, yeah, very cool product.
No, it's super cool. But I was taking a look at. I forgot what we were talking about. Thematic investing. Kind of where the puck is going, and I was reading these industry reports about how data is being used within water utility companies. And, the main message was there's more data than they can do with. What do they do with it? Right. And then I think about, the products that are going out to market, that need to be a 90%, 80%, 90% gross margin business, like, yeah, here's what we do. How can we combination? Then you have like, the people saying, well, we really don't know like the application to do it. So then there's a huge managed service layer, right? Which makes me believe, and this is me trying to pump my own investment thesis, right? Is that a smaller out of the box product that we're like, okay, we know the industry well enough. This is like what you're dealing with. Like, here you go. Yeah. Right. Is something that's of value as opposed to a big snowflake, big instance. I got to hire a consultant that's going to dig into my business. And then, I have to pay him $500,000 to implement Snowflake, Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. And I think, I agree to a certain level, right? Like if you focus on a niche, it allows you to tailor more to a specific use case. And as a consequence, it will probably resonate better with a potential customer. Yeah,
but on a horizontal basis, is there always going to be a need for a managed services layer? Like, do you see that your customers, have the data, they just don't know what to do with it? Like, are you running into that?
Yeah. So what we're talking about, like in a bigger setting, is basically cloud, right? The data cloud. So this all started 12 years ago with AWS. And since then, Google has followed with Google Cloud and Microsoft with Azure. But what these entities are great at is basically providing mass storage and compute capacity, right? And the advantage for customers is that it's scalable, etc. But what they're not very good at is, okay, let's say you're that water company or whatever, and now you want to build a data infrastructure. There is still so many very detailed, so much information you need as an individual, let's say as a data engineer, to build an effective data infrastructure, that those three companies left a wide open gap for others to build on top of them. And I don't think that's going to change. In fact, I think there's going to be more solutions built on top of that. And over the past few days, AWS did their big conference. I think it was called reInvent or something. They're perfectly fine with that, right? They make 25% operating margin, and
that's insane.
They're growing
30%.
Yeah,
it's so crazy.
Yeah, so why would you disturb that? You know, their partners are their partners. They're their customers.
Yeah, they're doing well.
Yeah,
they're doing well. So, just to tie a bow on it, data warehouse, data ingestion, BI to a certain extent.
Well, initially we had included BI as well, but what we still have a very kind of simple out-of-the-box BI solution that smaller organizations can work with. But BI, there is a couple of very big, powerful players out there.
Domo,
Tableau, Power BI, Looker, and they've done a fantastic job. And organizations are already used to working with those type of tools. So we have determined that is kind of out of scope for us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, but just in general from the tech stack. So who else, what other functionality, that data catalog, where else is there applications within big data in that space?
You mean in the context of IOMETE or in general?
In general.
Yeah. So if you look at the type of solutions in the big data, there is so the storage and compute. So that is what in the 80s was a data warehouse that has then moved to a data lake, and now has become a lake house, which basically combines the benefits from a data warehouse and a lake house. So it really allows you to dump all your data, structured data, unstructured data, HR, finance, video format, doesn't matter. It goes all kind of in the same repository. So that is one, I would say, the core component of any data stack. That's what that's the area that we focus on. Then there is ingestion. So ingestion is, a word kind of speaks for itself. Sometimes it's called ETL. So this is get data from Salesforce in that lake house or that data lake or the data warehouse, right? So go from third-party data sources into the lake house. That is also a specialized area. So there are players like Fivetran and Airbyte that are specialized in that. Then you have data monitoring tools that serve to make sure that the quality is great. There is data catalogs and PI. Those are kind of the core
pillars.
components. Yeah. And we for now what we include is that central data storage and compute, so the central repository, the data catalog, because those two are very, very much tied together. We also provide data access control, which is becoming more and more important with things like GDPR and HIPAA and the privacy of data, but also just making sure that the right person has access to the right data. And that's kind of a layer that we have laid on top of the data or the data lakehouse.
Why is it that GDPR is a big deal, but anybody can send me a political ad on my text message?
Those are probably not GDPR compliant parties that sent you that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not a loophole. They're breaking the law.
Well, we're not in Europe, GDPR is only Europe. So here it would have to be I think California.
Yeah, there's a California thing,
the
right?
CCPA or something.
Right. Cool. So how'd you go from being a leader of one of the biggest direct-to-consumer mattress companies to big data? You want to talk a little bit about your transition?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I was CEO of Tuft from 2016 till we basically exited at the end of 2018. After that, I stayed on for a year under new ownership, but the atmosphere changed dramatically.
Yeah. PE's got a lot of value destruction involved into it.
Yeah. You know the story. You know how it goes. But still a great company, still a great brand. I still have a bunch of friends that work there and do a great job. But then I actually decided to start an AC, residential HVAC company with a mutual friend. And the timing of that venture was incredibly unfortunate because it was like we bootstrapped it. So we put our own money in, and then we had developed a product. We had hired our first technicians, and then COVID hit and the supply chain came to a halt. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like one of those out of left field events that we had not included in our business plan. So we ran out of money and decided to stop that. Actually, I met Fuzal, my co-founder, who is the CEO and the technical brain behind what we do, through a mutual friend. He lives in Amsterdam. And I invested in his pre-seed round, so when he started this project. And over the past, I just kept in touch with him. Like we became friends and we talked about business and startups and all that. And then at one point, we decided to do this together, which was, I think, August of last year. And then we got into Y Combinator early this year, which was a great experience. After that, we raised some money and we were able to hire some engineers, because before that, the MVP was really built by almost Fuzal alone. And he worked on that for a good year. Over the past months, we have been able to mature our product significantly, and it's now being used by a couple of customers. And we're now quickly transitioning to commercializing it. So 2023 becomes kind of the year of truth for us when it comes to customer acquisition. Mm-hmm. So, and that's where I think, my experience with growing a company in a bootstrapped fashion, being very scrappy and making sure that we run an efficient customer acquisition machine, I think will come in handy. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are right now. And I think we're pretty close to signing up our first big customer, which is a telecom company. So that would be major for us, because it would probably add like $500,000 to our ARR. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that happens over the next weeks.
Yeah. That would probably be a pretty sticky customer.
Yeah. I think they all are in the end. Like we have